everybody, my name is Allison. I'm the Programs Outreach and Youth Services Manager here at Monterey County Free Libraries. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Self-Care Sunday. Today I wanted to talk about something that isn't so easy to talk about, and that is grief during the holidays. The holidays are always marketed as this really fun, warm, loving, happy time, but for a lot of people the holidays can be really difficult. If you are experiencing a loss, if you are going through grief, if you feel disconnected from your family or isolated, the holidays can be really, really hard. For me, my father died 5 years ago during the holiday season, very suddenly and unexpectedly, and so the holidays can be really, really hard for me. And because of that, I have been spending the last 5 years doing a lot of research into how to move through the holidays and not have it be such a heavy and sad time, but to make it more palatable and easy to get through and manageable. Not to say that I don't miss my dad or grieve his absence, which I do all the time, but these tips that I'm going to share with you have made things a little bit easier for me. And I hope that if you are experiencing grief during the holidays, that they will help make things easier for you as well. The first tip is to set realistic expectations for yourself. So this can go one of two ways. Either just make sure that you're not thinking that everything will be back to normal, or make sure that you're not thinking that everything's going to be terrible. Try to set realistic expectations and acknowledge that every single year is going to be different. There are some years that I feel sadder than others. There's some days where I feel sadder than others. And so you should acknowledge that every year is going to be different. That first year tends to be really hard, but I've also met some people who the first holiday season without a loved one, there's just still so much shock around it that they don't really notice until the second or third year. So just set realistic expectations for yourself. Try to go in with an open mind to the holiday season, and just make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on yourself to act completely normal. And if you're feeling okay, don't put too much pressure on yourself to feel sad, because it can go in both ways. Sometimes folks feel a lot of pressure to feel sad even if they don't, and other times people expect everything to feel completely normal and are disappointed when it doesn't. The second tip is to accept help. It can be difficult for a lot of us to accept help, and it's always hard to talk about feelings and reach out for help when you need it. But make sure that if you are being offered help and you could truly use that help, whether it's with preparing a holiday meal, gift shopping, setting up decorations, what have you, that you accept it. Third is say no when you need to. Don't feel like you have to say yes to everything, especially when it comes to traditions that might be difficult for you. If you don't feel like putting up the lights this year because that was something that you did with your loved one who's no longer there, then you can say no, that you don't feel like doing it this year, that it's a little too painful for you. Just make sure that you are aware of your boundaries and don't feel bad asserting your boundaries. There are ways to assert boundaries without being rude, and just make sure that those around you know that you are doing it for your own self-preservation of feelings. I find that it's really helpful to brace it by saying, you know, I'm not able to do X, Y, or Z this year because I'm feeling this way. But you also don't need to provide a reason. It's all up to you. It's very personal in how you say no, but make sure that you say no if you need to. The next tip is to try to avoid canceling. It can be very tempting to just say, I'm not gonna do this holiday this year, but one thing that you really don't want to do if you can avoid it is to isolate yourself. And that leads directly into a bigger tip, which is to surround yourself with people that you love and that love you and can support you. Everything looks different when you're experiencing grief during the holidays, and especially that first or second year might be really hard to cope with, but canceling the holidays won't make the feelings go away, and it could actually make things worse. You could feel a sense of regret afterwards, disappointment at missing out on something, especially if it means that you're not seeing people that you normally would see. During times of grief, you really want to make sure that you bring people around you who love you and support you and can help lift you up and listen to you and recognize your feelings. However, I want to go back to another tip that was say no if you need to. If you really, really feel like you can't do certain things, then it's fine to cancel those. But just try to be aware that you're not completely isolating yourself during this period of time. Next is take care of yourself. The holidays are known for overindulgence most of the time, whether that be eating or drinking, but you want to make sure that you are still staying healthy. So exercise regularly, eat properly, don't overindulge with alcohol. All of these things will end up making you feel physically worse, which will end up making you feel mentally worse. Second to last is create new traditions. Now, this might be hard to do right away, so it might be something you want to do a year or two after you've experienced the loss that you're going through or the change that you might be going through. But creating new traditions will help you to refocus some new positive energy into the holiday. So an example of this is after my father passed, we just couldn't really fathom the idea of doing a at-home Thanksgiving without him because he was known for carving the turkey. And so we went out to a restaurant for a couple of years for Thanksgiving. And we've recently started having Thanksgiving back at home again, but it did take a few years of establishing a new routine before we were ready to go back to some of those old traditions without the key players involved. So you can, start a new tradition like that, like maybe going out to eat on the holiday, maybe taking a trip to a favorite place of your loved one, maybe visiting the beach or a favorite park. If you celebrate Christmas and have a Christmas tree, then getting a commemorative ornament for your loved one might be a way that you could remember them and celebrate them. I have a couple of commemorative ornaments for my grandparents. There are lots of new traditions that you can start to reinfuse the holiday with some positive. The very last tip that I have is to let yourself feel whatever you feel. There is a tendency, as I've been saying throughout this whole video, to put a lot of pressure on yourself to feel really happy during the holidays. And there's also a lot of pressure when you're going through grief to feel a certain amount of sadness. I know that there were times after my father passed where I felt like I wasn't sad enough, which is a really weird feeling to feel. But as anybody who's gone through a loss or a big change knows, the feelings come and go in waves. And that's something that I learned in my grief group as well. They come in big waves. So sometimes you really find that you're just underwater with your emotions and completely covered. And other times you feel like you're on top and able to cope better. So just don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to feel any particular way. When you feel a certain way, acknowledge the emotion that you feel. And if there are others around you, maybe make them aware of how you're feeling, if it's going to impact them or impact what you feel you're able to do or participate in. But just let those feelings come, acknowledge them, and don't try to force yourself to feel any one particular way. So those are my tips. I hope that they're helpful to you if you are experiencing grief during the holidays, whether it be a big loss, a big change in your life, or anything else. I sympathize completely and my heart goes out to you. I hope that these tips prove helpful to you. If you have any other tips that you would like to share with us, I would love to hear them. Please let me know in the comments below. And I wish you all a very safe and mentally healthy holiday. Take care, everyone.